Paul called me and asked if we would consider sponsoring this program, and we said at the library, absolutely, because we recognize how important On Track is and how important it is for the economic development of our community. Your library provides a lot of educational opportunities for all ages. We partner with such great people at the school board and at community colleges, and we're just so appreciative and so fortunate to have such dedicated educators in Washington County. You know, a couple of days ago I was reading that Amazon is looking for a new dual world headquarters, and some of the cities that are in the running, and the common denominator is the fact that they have a pool of educated workforce in the immediate area. So that tells us our future lies in education in Washington County. And with that, thank you for being here. We're very proud to be part of it. And Paul?
Thank you, Mary. Mary and her team at the library are great partners in the community, not only with the chamber, but throughout the community. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for what you do on our behalf. We appreciate it.
Oh, Paul, I forgot to introduce.
Please, here.
Introduce my assistant director, Kathy, and our head of adult programming and community outreach, Pat. And Pat is going to sneak out in a little bit because she's going to be on the radio in about half an hour.
Let's welcome these ladies. Thank you. Pat, just don't make a scene, okay? We won't stare at you. Well, Jim have a distraction or something for you, okay? The back door is right through there, I think. So, thank you for being here. And it's my pleasure to introduce Jim Kercheval. Jim is modest. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. And some of you know him well. Some of you know him just from his work with Greater Hagerstown. But he's a graduate of Shippensburg University, a math and computer science major. He had his own restaurant, Kirch's. Many of you may have eaten there. And to this day, he says every week, someone says, hey, when are you going to bring back your Kirch's? And I think he said, I'm finished with that, but thank you for helping me. He has been a commissioner for 8 years here in Washington County and has done great work, so he's got that perspective. He's been a baseball coach for many years, and now he's the executive director of Greater Hagerstown Committee, a great community partner. Let's welcome Jim Kercheval.
All right, folks, let's just switch. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. There's nothing worse when you have that feedback, so we'll just end it. I just wanted to say, it's good to be here this morning. As life would have it, I had some family issues we dealt with some aging parents the other day, so I'm operating on very little sleep. So I told Don if I just stall for a minute and stand still, somebody come up, tap me on the side of the head, I'd probably sleep and stand up. But it is a pleasure to be here. Before I get started, I do want to just recognize we have a lot of people in the room that have been part of On Track from the beginning. This is a list of our board members. I know for many of you have trouble reading that, but I'm not going to go through all the different names, but could we have a raise of hands of the board members for On Track? And then how about the other partners from On Track that have been here as well, has helped along the way. Greater Hagerstown is an organization that's about trying to do good things for the community. And one of the issues we came up with years ago was, and Jeannie Singer's in the room. Jeannie was my education chair beforehand. Now she's my boss, my chair. She worked her way onto that side. But Jeannie has been a dynamo in education with her co-chair, Mitesh Guttari. And my former chair is Chris Motes. So all three come from the educational world. So obviously education was a big part of Greater Hagerstown, what we were trying to move forward with. What we noticed back, several years ago is our education attainment levels are low. And that's a problem. And as a commissioner and doing a lot of economic development, that's certainly an issue that we were trying to overcome. And it was our Achilles heel when we had certain clients come into the room that we were trying to lure up to Washington County. So Greater Hagerstown said we need to figure something to try to jumpstart an educational movement in this community and try to raise those levels. We did some research and we came across some ideas and we pulled some stakeholders together, which is what GHC does, and said, look, here's the issue for the community, do you want to help? And the more I get into this issue, the more I kind of get a little nervous. I have 3 boys, and I start worrying about what's their life going to be like, how's things going to happen. But one thing it does give me comfort is you saw the people on the board and the others in the room, and we have some really dynamic people that have been in a leadership position to move this initiative forward. And I think there's great things to come. I also want to thank AT&T. They're not here today, but AT&T was one of our premier sponsors. When we were started and we really didn't have anything together yet, AT&T came up with 25 grand. They said, this is the type of issue that we want to see in communities. We like what's going on in Washington County. We want to push for collaboration. They've sponsored us with 2 very large grants in 2 years. Dennis Dunn has been a friend of ours, not just from the financial resources, but just to get our name out there and try to promote things through the community. We did a presentation to the FCC chair about a month ago, and that was Dennis bringing him into Washington County. He said, the one thing I want to make sure the chairman sees is a presentation from On Track. Lots been in the news the last few days about hurricanes. We had Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma. And one thing about hurricanes is they always have a forecast beforehand. You have the weatherman tell you it's coming. The data's good anymore. We could really narrow it down to, within a few days and within a few hundred miles one direction or another. But like what happens with hurricanes, you have some people that prepare. They go out, they do their shopping, they get the materials they want, they start boarding up their houses, and they recognize the danger that's coming there, and they do something about it. Then you got the other set that kind of says, I'm not sure, it'll be fine. We won't have a problem. And then when the trouble comes, it's too late. They're either getting rescued off our house, or they're that one car on the left there that's moving down the highway with the big traffic jam as everybody's trying to evacuate. And that's kind of a great analogy to what we're talking about. And what we're seeing is a workforce hurricane, a hurricane skills gap shortage that's coming not just to our community but to the whole country. And the research is prevalent. It's out there wherever you read. And it's something that we need to be worried about and to take some steps in advance to prepare, because this isn't something that's just going to happen overnight. There might be some chief board members in the room, but 50 years or so ago, Mack Truck was a big employer that employed 5,000 or 6,000 people. Fairchild was 10,000 people, and all of a sudden they kind of dwindled down to just a few. And that really took a hurting to this community. I mean, we really struggled with that. And the community basically passed hat, raised some money, bought a couple farms, created an organization known as Chief. Greg Snook's not here today, but Greg's the leader of that now. And from that, they started diversifying our economy by getting other businesses in these industrial parks, sold those for a profit, and now Chief is bought the property over at Mount Etna Farms and is hoping to help us with our next leg, where they turned $10,000 or $100,000 into $6 or $7 million, and now they're trying to get the high-tech companies to come into the east end of Hagerstown. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, when you're looking at what's coming, we're going to have to do something about it, and we're basically asking the community to join with us and try to make a change. So the questions are we going to be prepared for that, or are we going to be the group that just waits till the catastrophe's here and then start going? As I mentioned, there's plenty of research out there, lots of articles. It depends on what you're saying, whether it's 5 million, 4 million, 7 million, shortage of educated, skilled workers, what's happening. These are going to be jobs that are good paying jobs that employers are going to want to fill, but we just won't have the people to do them. This is a chart that talks about new hires versus job openings. And for the first time in decades, you see the first time the number of job openings is actually outpacing the number of new hires, showing that shortage is coming and is already here. You could see before the last recession it was almost getting there, and then we had a little reprieve because of the recession, but it quickly caught up. The Lumina Foundation is a national organization that's really promoting this idea of a workforce shortage and the need to really change things from how we do education to how we do K through 12 to try to make sure that we're producing more degree workers. They're saying that a goal of 60% of Americans will need to hold a high quality degree well, they said by 2025. If you talk to Jeff, who will be here next month, he'll say it's probably about 2019. But they've been one of the first to really push this on a national level. And this was one of the things that caught our attention at GHC when we were trying to put something forward. If you want to see where Washington County, how we fare in this comparison, Washington County is right here, 32.5%. These are people that have an AA degree or more, or a career credential. That could be a certification, electrician's certificate, HVAC thing. There's no really good data on what percentage of people have those certificates, but there's a Georgetown study that estimates about 5% of the national population does, so that's the number we used here. So you can see we have to double where we're at just to compare. And you look at some of the other very educated counties, and these are also some of the wealthiest counties, but you have Howard and Montgomery that are already above that number. So who's going to be sitting the best when companies are looking to relocate and needs employees? So why is this happening? Why is the urgency? And things have changed. And this is the part that if you don't do anything, just go home and tell your friends, we just need to wake up to this issue. So we haven't really adapted to this yet. But back in the 70s, almost 3 out of 4 jobs only required a high school degree or less. And those were jobs that paid middle class wages, jobs that we could all live a good life, raise our kids on, in a middle class lifestyle. Jobs requiring some degree of college, only about 1 out of 4. But today, that's completely flip-flopped. As you can see, 66% of the jobs are now requiring some college or a degree, and only 1/3 of the jobs requiring a high school diploma. The job creation heavily favors degree learners. As you can see here, since 1989, jobs hiring high school or less dropped 13%. Jobs taking college grew between 47 and 100%. And since 2007, this is when the recession started, again, jobs requiring only a high school diploma dropped 5.5 million, whereas jobs requiring a bachelor degree gained 8.6 million. This is another chart that basically shows the same thing as that graphic. You can see here the linear nature, linear nature of that growth, and it's pretty significant. And this isn't just something that happened because of the recession. This is since 1989. So that's called a trend. So I don't see that changing. That's not a blip. This is just showing the job growth since the recession of 2007. And you can see here, even during the recession, jobs with some sort of degree barely went below the line of zero. The master's degree and the professional degrees actually never lost jobs. They actually continued to gain. This is another graphic that showed this, but I think this is pretty dramatic. When I saw this, this came from a Georgetown University study. So out of 11.6 million jobs created since 2010, that's when the start of things were turning around, 11.5 million went to people with some college or degree, or 99%. Only 1%, 80,000 jobs, were created for people with a high school diploma or not. So the next time you want to talk to somebody and say, hey, he's not college material, that's okay. Not everybody is, but you got to continue the conversation and say, but understand if you're not going to go for a degree, you're going to have to look for a skilled trade, and that's okay too, because if not, you're going to be in a long line of people competing for just a few jobs. If you want to know how Washington County compares to that Georgetown study, this kind of explains why we're struggling with some things now as far as income or median income's dropping or farm rates are rising. You can see here about half of Washington County has a high school diploma or less, 51%. Whereas the job market's only at 34% is what the job market has. You can see here for bachelor degree we're about half, and grad professional degrees we're about half. For some college or an AA degree, we didn't have a breakdown in that study, but you can see we're very similar. So I'm not really sure exactly what the AA degree breakdown is on that. But if you look at that, you kind of understand why our economy's been struggling up here a little bit, why we didn't bounce back as quick from the recession, and why we got to adjust our chart to match a little more like what the job market's going to be. It's not just about the number of jobs, it's about wages. And this is kind of when you talk to economists nationally, this is one of the big parts. Education is a big reason the middle class is dwindling. Back in the 70s, and these are all 2012 dollars, a person with a high school diploma or less made about 25% less or $17,000 less than a person with a bachelor degree. Today, that's double. So a person with a high school diploma makes half as much, or about $34,000 less. So basically, those with the education are becoming the haves, and those that are not getting the education or the skill training are becoming the have-nots. If you want to see how this affects Washington County, I think this is a good indicator. This is the farm rate, which is the free and reduced meal rate. This is a good sign of what poverty is like in the county. Look where we've gone from 2000 to 2016. We basically doubled our position, okay? Can't read that, but that is the top 25 employers in Washington County. I just wanted to point that out. But if you look at our industries and the percentage of these type of industries in our community, these blue, and this is general now because I realize there's skilled and educated workers in all different industries, but these are a little more of the less skilled industries on this blue side, this lighter blue side. This purple side is more of the higher skilled industries, and you can see the majority of the industries in Washington County tend to be on that side. I want you to just keep in mind as we go through the next couple slides what these industries are: manufacturing, construction, warehousing, food, accommodations, tourism. This is a Wall Street Journal article that talks about the jobs at the greatest risk of a labor shortage. These are jobs that are going to be we're going to have a surplus of employees. So, for example, communications equipment operators have a 0% chance of having a labor shortage. So you don't want a low number there. But you can look at these workers and are these industries and look at how they align with that last chart. Okay, so basically the jobs that we have are going to start losing jobs. When you look at technology and the impact of it, this will be Jeff will be a great person to talk about this next month, so I'm not going to take away any of his thunder. But when you look at technology and what it's affecting, these are the jobs that are likely to be replaced by technology over time. Telemarketers, bookkeepers, cashiers, tellers, retail salespeople. Again, 13% of our industry is in the retail business, and look at the likelihood of losing a lot of those people. This gives me pause and makes you a little nervous because you're wondering, all right, if these jobs go, where are we going to be? And by the way, I'm just going to mention truck driver. For the next 10 years is actually in a real shortage. They're desperate for truck drivers. But this is kind of addressing, once you get the autonomous trucks, that shortage is going to get fixed soon. So if you got only another 15 years left to drive, and you're going to be in good shape. What happened there? Okay. So all this led us to try to come up with an idea. And what we came up with was an organization that we called On Track. And what this organization is about is bringing all the stakeholders together in the community to start collaborating on the issues, looking at the data, and trying to figure out how as a community we could start changing things. Because Boyd's back here, and Boyd's a hardworking guy, and he's up, from 5 in the morning till 10 at night, but he can't fix this problem by himself. The county can't fix this problem by itself, and Mary might be able to, but most other people can't fix this problem by themselves. You need the whole community to come together, and that's what we're trying to do, is rally the troops. We didn't just make this up out of thin air. We came across an organization called Strive Together. They came out of Cincinnati, and they had a successful operation about 10 years ago. And what we liked about their operation is they saw some significant increases in some of the benchmarks that we want to fix, like kindergarten readiness, third grade reading, high school graduation, college enrollment. When they started this cradle to career network in their community, things changed, and they changed for the better. There's about 70 different networks like ours across 31 states, 31 states plus DC. And then in Maryland, Baltimore Promise is the only other one. They've been around a few years longer than we have, and they had a lot of funding and kind of are a little bit ahead of us, but we're catching up. Our vision: every person in Washington County is prepared to thrive in a 21st century workforce. So we want engaged, self-reliant citizens. Our mission is to align the resources that we have, both nonprofit, public, private, from cradle to career, empowering individuals to maximize their potential through educational and vocational endeavors. So it's about trying to find where we're weak, where we're strong, getting everybody together to come together and solve that problem. The way we do that is we get input from all the stakeholders, and we try to facilitate a community vision and agenda for college and career readiness. We try to define and articulate the educational and career challenges facing the community. We want to establish shared benchmarks. We want to do data-driven decision-making so that we know that when we have scarce resources that we're applying them to the right place. And we want to encourage and facilitate collaborations and strategic action across the community designed at producing more degree learners and also producing more skilled learners in the trades and vocational ends as well. You're going to see me talk a lot about post-secondary education. When you hear that, that's not just college. That's also the skilled workers as well. We have 36 active partners, and this is tremendous. When we looked at a lot of the other communities, this has been an area they struggled with, getting people to the table. There's a lot of silos and control issues, and we never had that problem. When we had the very first event, actually we had the opposite problem from a GHC perspective. Everybody showed up, and they're all like, all right, Jim, I love the presentation, let's go. When's the next meeting? And we're like, oh, wow, we weren't really ready for that yet. So what GHC usually doesn't tend to take on projects. We try to be a catalyst and get them moving, but what we decided to do is my board felt so strongly about what's happening here is they put a lot of my time in to help serve and be the acting executive director for now to get this thing up and running, and then we hope to move that on to where it's self-standing. But as you can see there, this is the who's who of educational people within Washington County. Pretty much have everybody at the table, maybe a few here missing. We're always open for some more. We have corporate sponsors that helped us from the beginning. Citi, when Jeannie and I met with Citibank, we didn't even ask them for money. We were just trying to talk to them and saying, hey, can you get behind this idea? We want your name behind it so that you endorse what we're doing. And they said, how much money do you need? Let's help you design a website and a brand. That's how we got the real pretty, the pretty logo from High Rock, who helped donate that. Hub Labels donated some of the window decals that are on your table. And then again, I mentioned AT&T, Weiss Brothers have donated money, and we've had some help from some of these other people as well. The way our structure works is we're an umbrella organization. This is a bottom-up organization, not a top-down. So I have no authority over the, whoops, I keep pushing the wrong button. I have no authority here over the 36 active partners. They make their own decisions, they have their own budget, they run things the way they want to do. What we try to do is just give them value by being able to come to one table, share what's going on, find where you can collaborate with each other, look at data, make decisions as a group on where our priorities need to be, and then the organizations go back within their leadership team and say, hey, I think we can help with kindergarten readiness, let us put together this project, or we can help with college enrollment, let's put together a project and do that. We break ourselves down into 3 different success teams, we call them, that are broken down between that cradle to career continuum. So what we found through Strive Together is you can't wait till you're in high school to start talking about college and being career ready. If you're not going to kindergarten ready to learn, you're going to be behind. You have a 4 times less likely to graduate. If you can't read by 3rd grade, you're going to struggle for the rest of your classes, because from kindergarten to 3rd grade, you learn to read. From 3rd grade on, you read to learn. I always think I'm going to mess that up. Okay, we also have a little bit of staff here that we want to try to program. The staff, the directors would kind of work with our data collecting, our funders, with the public, be the voice to the public, some of the stakeholders, the business community, and they kind of help just logistically facilitate all this work. What the leadership team does, and the leadership team has a representative from each of the partners, we kind of start out with the data, look at that, pass that data on to the success teams. They try to view where projects need to go. They might make some recommendations for initiatives or joint initiatives we need to work on. The active partners pick those up and try to do them, and then it goes all back up to the leadership team to review a year later and say, hey, are these working or not working? So, I forget the next part. So, for the group as a whole, we kind of came up after about the first 2 years of study. We looked at the data, and we came up with our top five major things the organization wants to work on. First is collaboration, family, school, community, cradle to career. Again, as I said, this is not an issue a public body can fix. This is going to have to be like Chief, where everybody came together around a solution, got their hands dirty, started to try to change things, change the conversation in the community, put resources where they needed to be, support the organizations they need to support. That's how we're going to fix this. Okay? And we don't have a lot of time. In fact, we're probably still behind the 8 ball, but we could do some catching up. The first step and the first benchmark is kids have to enter kindergarten ready to succeed. If not, they're going to get behind. And you've seen a lot of press on that. We have an organization called the ECAC. Terry is here. Terry is also the chair of On Track, and she also helps run the ECAC. Hi, Terry, over there. Terry was actually a mini On Track just for the K through 5 or K through 3rd grade group. So they're their own little mini umbrella group that started before On Track. Instead of doing things where we duplicated efforts, we went to Terry's group and said, listen, we want to do an early childhood subgroup. Why don't you all just fill that role and become part of the On Track movement, which they agreed to do. The next is students need to achieve grade level reading and math. Again, I mentioned 3rd grade is a critical component. We got to get our students reading at grade level then, but we also want to keep them moving along on the math as well as the reading so that they don't get behind. Students and adults need to acquire skills, direction, and access to post-secondary education and career credentials. So, as the public goes through and needs retrained or is trying to navigate this new economy that's coming, they're going to need direction. They're going to need access to services. They're going to need counseling. We need to figure out how to put all that together, as well as encourage our students and inspire our students to get into the fields and the studies of where the jobs are going to be. Ultimately, the end goal is that we change those first charts that we showed you, where a high percentage of people in our workforce will have the education and training necessary to be career and college ready, all leading to a rewarding career. Because really, that's all this is about: is how do we get you into a place where you could have a nice lifestyle and be a good contributor to this community. This chart here, this graphic, basically sums up that in a graphic, which you probably can't see the little words. But again, once we got the main 5 goals, then we went down to each of our subgroups and talked about them, what they wanted to do, and we started looking at some data. Why is early childhood important? 90% of the brain development happens before a child reaches age 5. Children living in poverty possess 8 to 10% less gray matter because they're just not using that as they're being developed. They're not getting the same stimulation that kids that have a higher level of child care get. Right now, 47.9% of incoming kindergartners in our county are living in poverty. That's a challenge. So when you see some of these other numbers coming up, keep in mind that our school system is working with some kids that have some limited access at home, limited abilities, and they are doing the best they can with what's coming in their doors. 81% of those served in public pre-K are living in poverty. You're going to see a good number coming up here with public pre-K in a minute, but they really take on a lot of the low-income families and say, we're going to take the hardest of the hard and try to get them up and going. Stacy's back here to help lead that effort. She's another real dynamo and asset to this community. Why is early childhood important? Again, I already did that. Some demographics you want to think about when it comes to early childhood. We're about half and half with male and female. About 1 out of 3 of our kids coming into kindergarten have minority status. Child care is really where you're going to see some of the differences, and that's something that we want to try to work on and adjust a little bit. About 1/3 of our population is right now in public pre-K. The school system took on this initiative a few years back. They've been growing that. They have some big plans to even increase that over the next year. And I think the goal is to move that up to double that number here over time. The other number you want to look at here is family child care. Family child care, this is at home care. Home and informal care. 21% of our population is that. And I say point that out because another chart that's coming up here. These are some of the data points on Are We Kindergarten Ready? And right now, only 1 out of 3 kids enters kindergarten ready to succeed and ready to learn. They are not passing the tests that they need to do, so they're coming in a little behind. Our goal for 2025 is aggressive, but 70% is what we like to see get to that point. And we got 7 years to get there. When you compare us to Maryland, the Maryland rate is about 43%. By the way, this olive green line is kindergarten ready. The blue is approaching readiness, and the orange here is emerging readiness, which is a nice way of saying not too good. They're not ready at all. How do we do compared to the other counties? Well, we're right down here towards the bottom. And again, remember that some of those stats that I pointed out, half of our populations coming in poverty, and that's what we're working with. Now, one thing that caught our eye here was Garrett County. Garrett County is very similar to us, and they are at 60 couple percent. Well, one thing Garrett County does is they provide public pre-K for all their kids. So you can see there the impact that has. So as Boyd and his group team has made that decision to move forward, there's some data that shows that's probably the right way to go. And that's the type of thing that we're trying to look at. What's the data say, and where's the direction we need to move forward at? Looking at some of the other subcategories, from the race ed, there's not a lot of difference. From the low income end, this was a number that actually surprised us compared to Maryland, but our 31% low income wasn't that much different than the upper income, which was 34, 35. Stacy? Something like that. It wasn't as big a difference as in many of the other counties. However, we did a sample this year of kindergartners versus the full group, and we're kind of curious to see next year the school system doing that a little different. We're kind of curious to see how that testing comes out. But when you looked at the other states, there was usually a bigger gap between low income and the upper income. Child care, you see some differences. In the private child care and the public pre-K, the numbers are much higher, 45 and 41%. Where in the home and formal care, that's the lowest, 14%. So another conversation to have around the dinner table, or in your little league, or at your, bridge club, or whatever the things you're doing is, I think a lot of parents, and we were even parents, you're always worried about safety of your child. Are we putting in a safe place? Are we putting in a secure place? But what you also need to be thinking about is putting your child in a place where they're getting stimulated, to where they're going to have the right brain development. Because if not, they're going to be behind in kindergarten. And that's a message we really have to get out there. And which Stacy and the board just put together some flyers and some information. We'll also have stuff in our full on-track report that's coming out here real soon. But that's one of those areas where you all could help a lot by helping that conversation change around this community, to let them know when you're shopping for daycare, don't just look for the place that's closest to your house, because your child's already fully developed, or 80% developed, 90% developed when they're in 5th grade. You can't go back and fix that. So get them off to a good start. Overall, the 5 priorities that the early childhood said that they wanted to work on to improve things was to raise that community awareness, and that's what I was just talking about. Improve access to quality child care in our community, and expand public pre-K. Work towards all children entering kindergarten ready for success. The other major component of early childhood is that 3rd grade reading level. How do we help to do more literacy projects? And Mary, I know, has been on the forefront of a lot of those, but how do we move forward with these literacy issues to try to improve 3rd grade? Terry's got a big event coming up here in October, Read Aloud 21-day challenge. It's October 2nd. We're going to try to promote that around the community, get everybody to read aloud to their child for 21 days straight. That's why. And finally, also working to get kids up to their mathematics grade level in their mathematics as well. Here's a nice initiative that Terry's group put together to try to help with that awareness. We all know when we have our child, we don't hesitate to go to the pediatrician and say, how's his weight, how's his height, how's he doing on those sort of things. Well, this book was in combination, collaboration with the CDC, where they came up with not just the physical development milestones, but the cognitive development milestones. And they have those based on each month. So as you go through this book, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 1 year, it talks about the stages of where your child should be at. It also gives you a list of things that you could do. So any parent, you should try to push this book. You can get it online. We got it in 2 languages. But try to get that out there and get them to use it. We're also working with the pediatrician community to try to say, for the doctors, talk to the parents about making this part of that habit, because we think that could change the culture as well. School age youth success team. Their top 5 priorities were, again, they pick up with that grade level reading at the end of 3rd grade, and they work towards the end of school. The other part, and I was just talking about this with Cody over there here beforehand, but we want to try to make sure soft skills, critical thinking skills, and financial literacy are all incorporated into the learning curriculum. And the school system has been doing that. I actually believe the motivation for this came from some discussions with John McCain, Horizon Goodwill, and the former superintendent also had these type of things where they're trying to build that into the curriculum. Students participate in a curriculum that prepares them to be college and career ready. We got to make sure that they're up to par. We're going to have to push them a little bit. We need to expose students early and often to career options and paths. You don't have to wait till they get in high school to talk about this. My 10, 11-year-old son now, about 2 years ago, he was watching 60 Minutes with me where they were showing a story about Apple. Then he decided, hey, I want to design Apple computers. Now I get him interested in doing math. So someday he could work for Jeff over there. He said he would. But I mean, those are the things, who knew that would excite him in an Apple 60 Minutes program? Because believe me, he's not the type to watch 60 Minutes. But that just inspired him, and now actually he's over at Western Heights doing the graphic art program, in a magnet program to try to get into that. Students graduate from high school with the skills to be college and career ready, and a post-secondary plan, and this is key, a plan that is relevant to the current job market. We got to make sure we're talking honestly to these kids and doing our research about what's coming down the pike. Where are the job openings going to be? What are the things you're going to want to do? You know, we don't need everybody getting into the beauty salon business. Great job, things you could do, but the market's flooded. Criminal justice, my son was in that. That's a wonderful program. But again, where's the job market there opening? We have to have that discussion. So if that's their passion, fine. But we need to make sure they're doing some thinking and coming up with a plan of not just what they want to be, but what you got to do to be there, to get there. Some key indicators the school age youth looked at. About, again, that third is similar in the 30%. About 30% of the 8th graders meet or exceed expectations for reading. This is up from the 33% in 3rd grade. So they are making strides. The longer we're seeing kids in the Washington County Public School systems, the better they're doing. And that's a good thing. It says a lot about what we have. If you want to compare that, Washington County was ranked 11th, so we're about in the middle there. The highest was Worcester County at 66%, lowest Baltimore City, 14%. Our goal, 70%, is what we want to do by 2025. High school graduation rates is a real plus for this county, and when we're looking at these other Strive Together organizations around the country, this is an area where a lot of people struggle. Washington County has always had good results here. We're at 93% now. That ranks above Maryland at 89 and above the United States at 83. So congratulations again, Boyd, for what you're doing in that work. We still want to think we can do a little better, so we just threw a couple percent, so we always work harder. Okay. 32% of our 9th graders meet or exceed expectations for algebra, the PARCC test, Algebra 1. Maryland requires everybody to take Algebra 1. Not every state does that. So some states look to try to get participation rates in algebra that are in these Strive Together models. For Maryland, since everybody's taking them, we want to see that they're succeeding. So we're going to start tracking that part. Again, it's about a third. We want to see if we can get that up there. Let's see, FAFSA completions. This is the application for federal aid. Right now, about 55% of our students fill that out. We would like to see that number increase because I think there's a lot of families out there that are in that lower income level that would qualify for funding that have no idea that they could do that. They just get confused by the system. It's awkward. We have things called Fast for Frenzy, another program that Jeannie started, now the Education Foundation is running. That's a program where families could go to the mall and get free help and assistance filling out that application. We'd like to get that goal up to 75%. About 14% of our students, and this is actually a very good number, but about 14% of our students are already taking college level courses while in high school. That is through the Essence program, which our community was very progressive about. Dr. Altieri has worked with several superintendents down the road to put those plans together. That's through the middle college that also started. But right now, when you look at all the students that are taking one of those courses, there's about 433 juniors and seniors that are taking Essence, and about 38 last time were enrolled in the STEM Middle College. These are all provided by HCC, so they're actually getting college credits before they get out of high school. What a great start. That number's at 14%. Let's see if we get that up to 25. Apparently I can't talk anymore because the button's not working. All right, we'll do this. It's frozen.
Jeff, can you help me out?
Here we go. Hold on a second. Other key indicators we're looking at, things like SAT scores, AP scores, student graduation surveys. A couple little tidbits from that. About 58% of our students took the SAT in 2016. Right across the street, Barbara Ingram had 98% of their students taking that test. That's the premier one. North High was the lower end at 41%. SAT scores, you want to get at least 480 in English and 530 in math to meet expectations. Our students are getting 497 in English, 511 in math, so we're a little low in math. This is a number that we're not sure how to figure it out, but I think it says students want to, but they're having barriers that are getting in their way. When the student graduates, they're surveyed. 81% of the students said they were going to enroll in college, whether it's part-time or full-time. But when we look at the enrollment numbers, it's only around 61%. So of that extra 20%, why didn't they enroll? Is the question we're trying to ask ourselves. What were the barriers that kept them from enrolling? If they wanted to do it, let's break down those barriers. Workforce Career Team, they look at this attainment data. Here's a good example of how we compare around the rest of the county. This is the percentage of population with the bachelor's degree or higher. Again, when companies are looking for the educated workforce, this is typically the number they look at. Population 25 or over with that degree. Washington County is just under 20%. Maryland's at 37%, United States at 29%. So right there we have a lot of work to do. The lighter the green, the lower the numbers. You can see Central Maryland is where the concentration of degrees are. And then as you get out to the edges, those tend to drop off. If you're looking at our neighbors to the north and south, Loudoun County is very high at 58%, which is expected. And then we have Jefferson and Berkeley County are over here, and Cumberland and Franklin County are about similar to us. If you want to see historically how we're doing, and this is why we said we got to jumpstart our rate, since 2009 we haven't moved up a whole lot. We were at 18.3%, now we're at 19.9%. Not a big jump. Again, some other key indicators. We talked about the bachelor's degree rate. We'd like to get that up to 30% over time. And then back to that Lumina chart I showed you earlier, we were at 32.5, which if you take off the career credential number, that comes up to 27%, have an AA degree or higher. That's the only data we could actually get directly. We're at 27.5, we'd like to get that up to 50%. And again, we're ranked 19th statewide. State average for that number is about 44%. The highest again is Howard at 66, lowest Somerset at 19. United States is about 50% more. Okay, some other tidbits here. Just some numbers you throw around. A student could get about almost $6,000 in a Pell Grant. Costs about $4,000 a year to go to HCC. So it's not that's a little more complicated. I don't want to make that overly simple there, but the bottom line is, if you qualify for Pell Grants, which many of our low-income families do, which is why we want them to apply for FAFSAs, they may be able to get the majority of their college paid for with the current day's policies, not without anything that's new. Again, a person makes about $1 million more if you have a bachelor's degree versus a high school diploma over a lifetime. That should be some encouragement. And for people that think there's a stigma to go into HCC versus going other places, 45% of all American undergraduate students attend a community college, which 41% of those students being first-time freshmen. So it's not unusual to start out at community colleges, and I think you're going to see that going there. We got a great program with Mark's operation over at USMH. You go to 2 years of community college, and then go over to Mark and fill in some things there, and you can get all that done, without going local. You got Chris over here with Kaplan University. They have those programs as well, soon to be Purdue University in March. We were just talking, so another opportunity for you. Other data we look at is college cost, transportation needs. If we could get kids to go to college, how do we get them there if they don't have cars? If you look at our data, a lot of families do not have more than one car, if that. Mental illness issues, these are things we're seeing. Talking to like Dr. Attieri, Mark, others, Student counseling services don't stop K through 12. Sometimes kids get in post-secondary education, they start struggling and start dropping out. The national dropout rate for college is well, the dropout rate's over 50%. The completion rate's only 41%. So those are things we got to work on as a country. Percentage of disconnected youth. That disconnected youth is a youth between 18 and 24 who does not have a degree, who's not in school, and does not have a job. What's that number for our community? We don't know exactly. The county's in the process right now with a consultant doing a study to come up with that number. So we're going to have a little better grasp of where that's at. And unemployment rates. Coming here to the home stretch. Workforce career. Some of their top 5, again, expanding connections between the school-age youth and the business community. We want businesses to get out into the schools and talk about what they're doing. And quite frankly, if you're not doing that and you need high-skilled employees, you're going to regret it because you're going to start putting up help wanted signs and no one's going to fill it. Don't be like the manufacturing community who 20 years ago they said, hey, 30 years ago they said your workforce is aging out. You need to do something about it. And some did, but a lot of them didn't. And then all of a sudden when they're not filling those roles, now they realize they need to get to the counselors and try to make those statements. Volvo is a great example. They brought a whole group of high school counselors into their establishment and showed what manufacturing has changed, how it's almost like a surgical center with robotics and everything else involved. It's really exciting. A lot of counselors had no idea that that was the work environment in Volvo. When they brought the counselors in there, and the counselors are more apt to start talking to their kids about those opportunities. That's what we need to do as a business community is figure out how do we get it in the classrooms, how do we start now recruiting our future workforce. They want to, of course, increase enrollment rates to post-secondary education. Again, that's college as well as the trades. Break down barriers to post-secondary degrees and credentials. Those are things like cost, transportation, family issues, things like that. And then again, this is pretty big, is make sure we're aligning the curriculum with the post-secondary needs of the workforce. So if we're teaching people to have degrees that are obsolete today, and I think this is part of Jeff's conversation next month too, we need to adjust on that. And that's not easy to do. I can tell you, working with Mark, driving a 4-year school like the University of Maryland is like driving an oil tanker. So if you want to come and change something quick and you go to turn the wheel, about 3 days later you start bending off to the right, which for us about 3 years, 4 years. If you remember some of those lists, nurse practitioner and a physician assistant are going to be in high demand, and we've got this great program that's going to be going downtown through Mark. How many years did it take us to get that?
We started 3 years ago, and it'll be 2 more years.
So 5 years from when we had the idea to when we get the class open. That's got to change, and that means turning the 4-year school world upside down. Guy has a little easier. It's a little more executive over there at HCC. So when he sees things happening, he can kind of make those decisions a little quicker. But we need to figure out how to do that differently. And then again, re-engaging displaced workers. Why is that important? Why do we care when we look at a kid in 4th grade and they're dropping out of, they want to drop out of school, and we say, you know what, you're a headache, you're a problem in school, just go to the next grade. Why should we care? It costs $14,000 a year to the taxpayers for every kid 18 to 24-year-old that has no degree, not working, and not in school. That's from a study that was, I think it's 2012, latest what I could find. That over the course of their lifetime is about $750,000. So our community is hurting itself by not putting an effort together to re-engage these kids. And that's an area that we're a little weak on, I think, when we looked at that with the community. But we're starting to talk about that. Horizon, I don't want to speak for John, but they've expanded what they've done over the last several years. They're getting into that game. I talked to Mary as well about some things, and the county right now is doing that study. So hopefully we could start looking at that population and start putting some effort and resources towards it. Just kind of finishing up here, this is the occupations that, this is the top 25 from 2014 to 24 that's being projected by the Department of Labor. But in red, look at all the ones that are involved in the healthcare world, okay? In red is the ones that do not involve math or education. That, by the way, is commercial divers. That's not a typo. These are people that dive underwater. So of the top 25, all those have to do with math and health. So if your third grader says, I don't like math, you gotta say, can we do something to get you encouraged to do something there? I'm gonna skip over that. A couple good things happening. A guy couldn't be here today, but I did want to acknowledge this Promise Pathway program. We talked about breaking down barriers. The school system, Washington County Public Schools, and Dr. Arteri put this together. This is basically identifying kids throughout the K through 12 system that are college material, that have the drive, but maybe have low income and need some guidance. They're going to pair that up with some casework. They're going to help them from when they get into the program to when they get out of college or get out of high school. And the promise part is, if they follow the guidelines and help move along the way, and they will help tutor them along the way, that they promise they will pay for their college. So they will apply for Pell Grants, but if they don't get everything and they have shortfalls, the College Foundation is going to kick in. But what makes that great is when you're talking to first-time college-going families, and you say, you know, we want you to go to college, and they go, I don't, you know, it's a little scary, we've never done it. You basically are saying, if you do what we tell you and help work it along, we promise it'll be free. It's pretty simple. You know, all the little details you work out later, but the college is promising they'll cover that cost. We have some local vocational training centers in town. Again, this isn't just about college. Ward Beauty School, Pittsburgh, Ward Bar Construction Institute. I wanted to give kudos out here to Butch. Butch is in here for PIA, but they recently got listed at rank number 11 on Forbes list for the top 32-year trade schools in the United States. And if your kid doesn't want to go to that math and health, if you look at this program for $28,000, and Butch told me if you're paying $28,000, you make no effort to get financial aid because almost every student he has get qualified for something. But for $28,000, you're done in 16 months. It's eligible with a GI Bill. Your average starting salary coming out is $36, and the early career salary is $52, and they have an employment rate of 95%. Those are pretty good numbers if you want to look to do something different. Again, a gem that we have in Washington County. I think Butch is going to expand into some other things if things go well here over the next couple of years.
You know, as we move forward, look for more things coming with On Track. You know, we are looking for funding from different sources. We're looking at grants and things like that. But most of all, what we're looking for, you know, the general population to do is just have a conversation. So whatever you can do there, we certainly appreciate. And any questions, or I know we're running out of time, feel free to call.
Jim, I can only do it once.
All right.
That's me at 4 months old.
Are there any burning questions or comments for Jim or for the group? Let's give Jim a round of applause for a great presentation. So as you see, we have a lot of work to do, but I don't know about you, I'm pretty proud of what we're doing in Washington County. We have a great group of team members led by great organizations. So the future is bright. As Jim mentioned, we do have to work together to get there. I want to again thank Mary and the library. Let's give her a round of applause for being part of this. Jim and I talk a fair amount about different things, whether it be Community Coalition or this initiative. And I won't speak for Jim, but sometimes I get discouraged and frustrated about this. This is an important topic and issue, and sometimes we don't believe, and I don't believe it gets enough attention. And so that's part of your mission, to get attention from the folks that we need at the table, our elected officials, our parents. We have great support of the school system, and so we need to do more of that. And so just when I was feeling a little blue, I went to Doey's house, the hospice care house, ribbon cutting last week. And if you're there, it's pretty motivating and moving event. And so Neil Glesser talked about 4 years he was trying to get this done, and he got discouraged along the way, and up to the very end, as you know, the house burned down. He was getting ready to open it, and he said, I thought that was the darkest day, but he kept going. And so it gives us hope that we have to persevere. And so I thought this quote was appropriate to read to end the morning with before you go off to work. It's from Thomas Carlyle. He was a Scottish philosopher, satirical writer, essayist, historian, and teacher in the 1800s. And he's had this about being persistent, about striving and carrying on. And he says, permanence, perseverance, and persistence, in spite of all obstacles, discouragements, and impossibilities. It is this that in all things distinguishes the strong soul from the weak. So when we're feeling discouraged, or when I feel discouraged or frustrated, just know there's no option. If we're going to be successful as a community, we have to do this. So we thank you for your participation. We thank you for your support. Please go out and preach the gospel to the unconverted yet. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll send out this presentation to you as well as the report card here. We have your emails, we'll send it out to you. So again, Jim, thank you, and thank you to On Track. Have a good rest of the day.